I thank the honourable member for Bruce. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And Deputy Speaker, I want to start where the member left off, which is to highlight some of the somewhat hypocritical arguments that were put before this chamber. He talked specifically about how we should let the market rip and remove all investment, all government subsidies in the renewable energy sector. In order for him to say that consistently, he would have to say he's against the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, abolish it. That's what the member was arguing. He was arguing, let's get rid of ARENA, which focused on investment in new technology and innovations. He would argue that we should have got rid of the renewable energy target when it used to be in place. Of course, he definitely wouldn't have supported the carbon tax as well, because that would have been a bad subsidy to the private sector as well. Of course, these hypocritical arguments go to the heart of the disjointed and incoherent position of the Australian Labor Party on energy. He doesn't even know his own electorate, because his electorate is close to mine. And the Goldstein electorate and many of the businesses that operate just outside of it are many of those that do one thing. They die cast, which means they have to melt metals. So unsurprisingly, you can have arguments about renewable energy. I'm not arguing that. I'm pro-technology. But I'm also a realist. Wind turbines can't create the heat to melt metal unless they're on fire themselves. You need gas. That's why gas is a critical part of the manufacturing base of the economy. And some of the members on the other side argue against that or shake their heads because they obviously have no real connection to what you have to do in manufacturing. You need to melt things. You need to burn things. And that's why we're in this situation. I go to businesses, not in my electorate, just outside, in the members' electorate, and know exactly what they're like. And I know exactly how much it's a dishonest argument to put forward that everything can simply be replaced. Let's be realists. Let's focus on it. One of the reasons why the government has actually accepted the proposition of gas as a critical part of the transition to lower emissions and energy prices while guaranteeing reliability is for the reason the chief scientist comes out in support of it, because so much of the infrastructure that sits behind gas can be converted to hydrogen when it becomes viable. And the member who moved the motion, the member for Indi, is now shaking her head at the chief scientist. I mean, it's just extraordinary. They are not focused on the reality or the engineering associated with energy. Now, as somebody who's studied energy extensively over many years, including in the climate change space, but not exclusively, it's clear to me that to have a sustainable transition plan, you need to look at what viable technologies sit in the marketplace, what can be delivered, and to make sure you take the country with you, which is exactly why we've taken the energy roadmap approach of mapping out a chart or a pathway of how we want to get to a lower emissions future, a cheaper energy future, and what we need to do to support technology into the marketplace. But the only solution that our opponents put forward is one with a singular lens, where cost doesn't matter, where they're not worried about the impact on families. And let's remember who are most impacted on this issue. It is not the well-off, it's not business, though they have their own consequences, and when it does, it hurts jobs. And jobs is going to be critical in the months and the years to come. And job creation is going to be critical in the months and the years to come. It's the poor, Deputy Speaker. It's the pensioners. It's the people who don't have much of a margin in their household electricity bill. And they're the people who pay the cost of Labor and the independent, in this case's agenda, where they don't understand the energy market and think if they come into Canberra and they sit here and they tinker on their priorities, that somehow it's going to deliver for the Australian people. Versus the approach this government takes, where we map out a plan and invest in new technologies so they can build a future energy reliable supply for the country, so manufacturers can have gas that they need so they can melt metals, so they can produce goods, so they can sell Australian products internationally competitively, so that households can pay lower prices on their bill, whether it's gas because they've got old infrastructure and they can't necessarily change or upgrade, or because they need lower electricity bills, particularly in winter when it's cold, when they don't have the money to be able to support themselves. Every single thing we do is very mindful of what is it we need to do to cut emissions, what is it we need to do to cut prices, and what is it we need to do to make sure we have a reliable energy supply for this country. And the alternative approach that's put before us in this parliament and in this, by this member and those on the Labor Party who support it is to make their priorities more important than the real experience of Australian households and Australian businesses, and that is why their conduct is so disgraceful.